Hi guys, Asmo here, and today I want to show you a budget version of a build I really like, and it's a Kinetic Blast Off Clustering Necromancer, originally made by Jungrown. Jungrown has a few videos about this build, and I highly recommend you check them out if you want to play this, because they explain different steps of the progression, and the build is constructed in a way that I really like. Lots of the solutions and the mechanics used in this build are things that I really like to use myself. I really love the Necromancer, the corpse tech and all of that, but unfortunately it wouldn't be a junk build without a drawback that you cannot see on POB, and in this case it's the game performance. As you can see, I'm playing on the lowest possible setting. I tried to tweak my PC to the best of my ability, test which MTX is the best for performance, but when we ramp up to the fully stacked attack speed, there is just so many explosions, chains, forks, bouncing off the walls, corpses being triggered, that my GPU goes to 100% and the fans sound like they're trying to create a black hole. So if someone like Starforge wants to sponsor me so that I can show how beautifully this runs on their machine, I will happily advertise it, because this build really requires a NASA computer to play. This version, the version that I made, is just an entry-level setup that took me a day to make, and by just following the junk POB and making a few adjustments, I arrived at this. The one thing I don't like about his setup was the lack of element avoidance. So I solved it in the simplest way possible by buying a Storm Shroud for a few divines, which is basically the most expensive item on this entire character, and then crafting a Stygian Vise with some Essences of Torment for shock avoidance, as well as adding a cheap shock avoidance jewel into that Stygian Vise, and this gives me 100% chance to avoid elemental ailments so that I never have to worry about it. The build can clear T16.5s, T17s, although at this level that I have it at, it is not good for killing the bosses. So I cannot kill the bosses, but I can farm the T17 maps actually insanely easily, because most of these maps have layout that is extremely good for KB with all the walls and tunnels. It's really good in closed spaces. But for these bosses, I have to invest more. This is really like entry-level day one setup. So I'm gonna show you how it looks like. We'll go quickly over the gear and I'll go over the most important things. So first of all, let's start with the weapon. On the weapon, you do not care about flat damage at all. We have the flat damage here only because I exalt slammed this. But what you care about is attack speed, increased spell damage, critical strike chance, critical strike multiplier, and mana. And you also want to craft the chaos pen, because we are doing chaos damage. How are we doing chaos damage? We are converting it all through the cluster jewel notable Overwhelming Malice. Whenever you crit, you got a 10% chance to gain Overwhelming Malice, so you do want to be crit capped, so you proc this constantly, and that's going to convert 100% of your physical damage, which you get from your skill gem. As you can see here, the skill gem says we have 17% of our max mana added as physical damage. So that's why we are getting a lot of fizz, and we're converting all of this fizz to chaos. And this also gives you wither on hit, and all of your kinetic blasts as well as your volatile dead are going to apply wither. Then we also have the anoint for penetration for chaos damage. So we're doing full chaos damage, and we're getting the base damage from our mana scaling on the gem itself. So that's what you want on the weapon. On the shield, you want a lot of chance to block. You want also int and mana, like on every piece of gear. Basically every piece of gear here, int and mana is going to be very beneficial for you, because it's going to just give you more and more damage, and it's going to be allow you to scale to a really high amount, especially when you add whispers. I do not have whispers on this character because, again, I'm not sure if I'm going to be investing and playing in this character, since it doesn't really perform very well on my computer. Maybe I'll play it a little bit, see how it goes. Whispers is like 8 divines, I think. The total cost of this character is, I think, around 10 divines or something like that, so it will be like basically double the investment. This is like very entry level gear, but it does perform very well. So here we have the intelligence. Crit chance for spells doesn't do anything, but we have mana and spell block, so you can also get like increased spell damage, and you can get also resistances on the shield, as well as you can also craft on a suffix spell suppression. Right now I have only a very limited amount of spell suppression from this, and spell suppression is lucky. That's what I'm using for now until I get higher level of gear. Again, that will be the next step in the progression, by just crafting spell suppression on basically every piece of gear so that you can cap it. Then we have the chest. On the chest, int and mana, like everywhere else. I was looking for int and mana and energy shield. And then the important thing on these rare pieces are the implicits. So I got the cheapest ichors and embers, and I put the recommended by Jungrown implicits here, which are all working very, very well with the build, and they are actually very important. So we have physical damage taken as chaos plus endurance charges. Endurance charges, you can see we are keeping up them at max. We have here cold resistance, accuracy, energy shield, mana, and more res. So basically you want energy shield, res, and accuracy. And also you can get mana and int, like on any other piece of gear. And then again, we have phase taken as chaos and +1 to lightning. That's because this build would later progress into a melding setup, which scales maximum lightning res. The reason is we have max lightning res here on this node that we are naturally taking. So it's the easiest one to scale from. So you can change that like max lightning to something else early on before you go melding. On the gloves, we have, again, attributes. You want energy shield, resistance, mana int, and then we also can craft like area damage, area of effect. Area of effect is very nice for KB. It increases your clear. This is one of the things that people discovered when they were doing legions. In order to do legions better, they needed like more AoE because the coverage increases quite a lot when you start like overlapping more of them. So a little bit of AoE is very helpful on this skill. And then really, really important implicit, chaos damage leeched as life. You need leech especially later to sustain the whispers cost, but leech is very, very important, and also rage on hit is gonna give you just perma rage while you're mapping. On the boots we have just movement speed, int, and resistances and energy shield, and then on the implicits you can get something like gain physical damage as extra chaos, and then also increased action speed. That's what I would recommend. Jung is using, I think, cooldown recovery for Frostblank, so you can use that as well if you want. And then we have the belt, which is very easily crafted with just the essence, I think, of Torment for the shock, and you want something like strength, mana, int, resistances, energy shield on it. Any of those are gonna be good, and then also a jewel with chance to avoid being shocked. I got one from the previous character with some crit multi on it, and that's cool, that's good enough. Just like one good mod and that is gonna be enough. And then we have the rings. So one unique item that I'm using is the Kikazaru, the Foulborn, which gives you mana per level. These are all right. They're not that good. Later on you would swap them for a better ring, but they're pretty good early on. Like when you get to like level 80, 90 or whatever, like early on it's going to be good amount of flat mana. And then on the other ring I have attributes because I needed a bunch of decks. So I got the attributes, energy shield, mana, and resistances. For the amulet we have just a bunch of attributes, life energy shield. You don't really want to commit too much to this because eventually you do want to get the whispers, which are like 8 divines I think, but they're very much worth it. This is what the build is supposed to go into, so that's why you don't want to rely too much on whatever is on your amulet. Just something decent that is gonna carry you until then, and that you can anoint. The anoint I think costs like maybe 40 chaos or something like that in total, maybe 50 chaos. It's not that expensive. The prismatic is I think the most expensive oil, but they're not that expensive. So this is like a hidden node that we are using, and that's it when it comes to the gear. We're using rumies for extra block, quartz flask for mainly actually the suppression because the phasing is not really important since we're like just obliterating everything on our way before we get there. And then you want, of course, silver quicksilver and crit flask. Ideally you'd use like a medics flask or whatever, not medics but like the better tier, the one that gives you a flask charge when you deal a critical strike. So that would be the ideal one to use, plus with extra crit, and you should be crit capped with all of that. So let's look at the gems now. The gems are where all the magic happens. So we have the critical strikes because I want to make sure that I instantly get my overwhelming malice, so I want to be crit capped. That's why we have this. Later on you can drop this for like wisps, for example, right? The wisp support. We have returning projectiles, which is of course mandatory. Increased critical damage on full life because we're CI, so we're always on full life. And then void manipulation. I wanted to use the void manipulation because I was igniting, I think, with this fire damage on the ring, so I needed to disable that so that my computer doesn't lag even more. So another reason to use void manipulation on this character, if you have some like extra flat flat fire from somewhere to make the performance a bit better. Then we have the spellslinger setup. So one of them has bone offering and tornado, so we get a bunch of block, a bunch of regen as well. Actually we don't get this regen because we do not have zealot's oath, so we just get a bunch of block from this, and then tornado, which helps our kinetic blast of clustering fork and just get more coverage and get more projectiles out of it. And then we have the Spell Slinger with Spell Cascade and Desecrate and Volatile Death of Seething. The Volatile Death of Seething is here because it consumes up to 10 corpses, and the regular Volatile Death consumes up to 3 corpses. So you can consume more corpses and do it faster if you use the Seething one. Here we also have the cast and damage taken Steel Skin, something to deal with a bleed as well. We have Assassin's Mark with Mark on Hit, and a mobility setup with Shield Charge Momentum, faster attacks, and Frostblink. When it comes to the passive tree, this is very straightforward, but there's a couple of really important things. I am still on like a very early progression setup where I still have to keep the practical application for the extra attributes and resistances, but later we drop that. But the most important thing, first upgrade you should take on this build, like you just go into the Overwhelming Malice, you go Chaos, you go CI as soon as you can. The gear is super cheap, highly recommend just immediately aiming for this setup. And then you want to get the Runegraft of Refraction. Extra fork and extra chain, right? Like guaranteed fork and chain. This just basically doubles your clear. Like it's just you go from insane to out of this world clear, right? This is the most important upgrade you're gonna make. So highly recommend like your first upgrade, Runegraft of Refraction, and put it somewhere where you're guaranteed to keep that node. So if you're using mana build, obviously always gonna have the Deep Thoughts for the mana regen and intelligence. So this is a very safe place to put it. Other than that, the tree is very self-explanatory. We're picking up power charges with the power charge duration so that we can have the endurance charges, 100% uptime. We are picking up int, we got crit multi, the wand nodes, we got this cluster jewel. Here I have just a corrupted blood jewel that I found with some block int and crit chance. What else do we have? We got the ghost reaver for our leech. We got accuracy, so there's a couple of ways to solve accuracy. You can get a bunch on the helmet, you can get it on jewelry, you can get it on gloves, you can get this mastery, and you can also get the wand mastery for accuracy from int. There's another one. There are 2 separate ones. You can pick up both of them. And then of course I have like a little bit of suppression. We got additional projectile while forking. This is also important. And then frenzy charges on a single target. And that is basically a setup early on. I don't have Uberlab even yet because like I said, I just like day one character basically that I spammed. If you're wondering how am I level 93 on a day one character, first of all, I used like cheap leveling gear, so I progressed really quickly. I was looking at Jungron's guide, so I knew exactly what to do, so that sped me up as well. And then I also used an Atlas tree that uses a lot of mechanics that increase experience. So I have like abysses with like super increased experience and magic monsters, temples with magic monsters, and harvest with magic monsters, and all of that, like so many magic monsters plus some like magic monster scarabs gives you a huge amount of XP. So it's a very, very quick way to level. But that's basically it. That's how the character is set up. I highly recommend it. And for the grafts, I would recommend using just something that has increased graft blood gained, any beneficial stats, and using Jolt, right? So the overcharged sinews, that's what you want, because Jolt gives you a maximum attack damage. You do take increased damage, but in general, it's I think a good trade-off for this type of build that basically off-screens everything. So that's what we're using. You can use something similar, and that's the setup. I highly recommend it if your computer can handle it. I will link the Jungron's guide in the description. I will link the POB to my character in the description as well, so you can look, compare, and see how to cheaply and easily set this character up. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.